Welcome to episode number 381 of the Marine Layer podcast. We welcome on a recurring guest, a friend of ours, Jason Churchill, for his annual interview previewing the Mariners' 2026 season.
Your guys' reminder, if you're listening to these podcasts, just do us a huge favor. Make sure you go download these episodes if you're listening and rate and review 5 stars. It helps a ton. Same idea over on YouTube, but go like, comment, and please go hit subscribe on YouTube. You can see that big red subscribe button in front of you. Just go press it. It supports the channel a ton. You can also check us out at our website, marinelayerpod.com. You'll find all of our episodes there. You can find all of our podcast merch there. You can find our Patreon there. All one-stop shop, marinelayerpod.com, and then you can find us all across social media at marinelayerpod.
Let's get it rolling.
40,000 Channing MVP. Fly ball to right field. Number 60. Rodriguez drills a ball left center field. Headed back there. Goodbye. Is 2-2. He struck him out. What a night, Brian Wu. 13 strikeouts, 6 innings of pure domination when the Mariners needed him the most.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network, recording here on Monday evening, March 23rd. This episode will come out the day before opening day, so a reminder to you all, if you're going to opening day, super exciting. We're doing an event at Occidental Hall, both pregame and postgame, whichever jive is more your speed. We will be there. We'll be partnering with our friends at the Hall and with Corona to do a little pregame event where we'll be doing some content with fans. We'll have some fun giveaways from Corona. You can enjoy some smash burgers and some brews. And then after the game, Lyle and I will be taping our Friday episode live from the Hall. So that'll be great. Please come by if you're going to opening day. It should be a ton of fun, and we'll kick off an awesome season of Mariners baseball. How's it going?
Cannot wait. I mean, can you believe we're one day away from opening day? Finally.
It's going to be really weird seeing baseball played live again, but I'm very thankful because now we'll have something to do every night again.
It's time for baseball to be back, and we're here. We are fired up. We had a really fun conversation with Jason Churchill. I will say, for anybody that knows Church or have listened to our past interviews with Church, he's very down the middle. He calls it straight. He tells you what he believes. So he might not be quite as high on the Mariners as we all are, but he gives all reasoning for it. And let's not totally deter the narrative. He still thinks the Mariners are going to be very good, but he just outlines a lot of both sides. And you hear it throughout the course of the interview.
We won't keep you guys any longer. Church long-winded, so he's got a lot to say, so we're not going to keep you guys any longer. Let's get you to that interview with Jason Churchill.
All right, well, how about this? 4th year in a row, we're doing our Mariners season preview right before opening day with our friend Jason Churchill. You can find him at Future Stars, at Prospect Insider, at Baseball Things. Church, always love talking ball with you. Are you ready for
4 years in a row? Is that real? 4 years? We've done this 4 years in a row?
Yeah, so this is year 4 of us doing the podcast. Like, this will be the 4th season of play while we've been podcasting. We're a little over 3 years in total. Mm-hmm. But yeah, every year, just like unintentionally, this has turned into a little bit of tradition. So now it's by intention this year turned into tradition where right before the season starts, let's have Church on to preview the year.
I can't believe you guys can stand me for a 4th year in a row. I mean, that's kind of the trend, right? Like 2-3 years is probably enough for Churchill, and then we can move on. So I appreciate it. 4 years in a row. How about that?
And you can still stand us. It's even.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Lyle and I always describe it this way, Church. You're a straight shooter. You'll hold Lyle and I accountable if we have something stupid to say. So let me start off with this. Has there been anything stupid we've said online that you'd like to bring up?
Man, I'm just not on social that much anymore, so
Smart.
I can't think of anything. But I know sometimes the intent, of some of it is just to provoke thought, and it's not necessarily that you believe everything that you're bringing up a question. I've seen your posts on social where it's and it's kind of in question form, and it's to provoke thought and conversation. So I try not to jump to conclusions there because I think we all do that to some extent. And you're trying to ask questions that fans might ask and want answers to. So I get that. So I try not to jump in. But yeah, there's often some things that you guys are talking about. And I'm like, all right. And here's the funny thing. I always wonder which one of these two guys is trying to be stupid. But I do understand that you're trying to provoke thought. Like I don't know what it would be, but I just make something up. moving JP Crawford to second base, or something. There's nothing really stupid about that. We know it's not going to happen. We known all winter it wasn't going to happen. So yeah, I just think there's a conversation there, to be had. I think because it involves a lot of other things like Colt Emerson and Cole Young and things like that. So I get it.
Is it safe to say you weren't as disappointed as Lyle when Kyle Tucker didn't sign with the Mariners?
I think heading into the offseason, I think we all knew that wasn't happening. But were you actually pushing for that, Lyle? Like you thought maybe they had a shot?
Pushing for it. I've been pushing for it for 2.5 years.
Okay, but were you thinking they actually had a shot too?
Oh, see, you can't put me on the spot with things like this. Now you're making me be honest, like right here on the podcast. Like make me tell the truth with Truth Serum. It was a great bit forever. Yeah. Did I actually, if you were to make me drink Truth Serum and make me answer the question, did I think the Seattle Mariners were going to ink Kyle Tucker to a contract? Probably not.
Okay. Do you think they had a chance though?
Well, that's
different. Actually getting it done, and because I think everybody believed they had a legit chance to keep Naylor. Right. I think we all thought that to trade for Donovan. Right. I think we all thought they had a chance to get that done. But Kyle Tucker, like there was no conversation. Right.
Well,
unfortunately, that's kind of the way it is, and we know that nothing's changed there with signing free agent hitters. It's still very, very difficult.
Sure. I mean, there's a difference between could they have done it financially and were they going to do it? No, they were probably not going to do it. Right.
And that's where the ownership versus front office plan comes into play. Two completely different things. Yeah. Sure. If I give you $10 to make a steak dinner, it's not gonna be steak, right? It's gonna be some other kind of fake meat, sort of ground beef, doctored up with some broccoli, and that's what Jerry DiPoto and Justin Hollander have been doing, and they've kind of turned that into some good things the last 4 years. But yeah, it's really difficult to, like, for the Mariners to change like that narrative around them, that they just don't have a chance to, like, I don't even know if it's possible. I don't even know if it's possible for them to do. They go out, they sign Robinson Cano, that big deal, overpay, right? We know that was an overpaid versus the market. And we actually know that for fact because the second biggest offer was under $200 million. Mm-hmm. So we know that. Then they go out and they sign Nelson Cruz, but it wasn't even that big of a contract. They've extended players. Julio got the big deal. But from a free agent standpoint, I just like when you think about what's keeping hitters from coming to Seattle, it's never going to go away. The weather, the way the ball travels, the ballpark, whether there's some sort of issue with the batter's eye or not, 95% of that's just never going away. They're just always going to be this club, which makes it kind of funny that they went out and early on in this regime went pitcher heavy early in the draft. I understand why people are wondering why they did that if it was so difficult to get hitters to come. But I enter into every single offseason completely deleting every major offensive free agent. And Josh Naylor was kind of the first exception to that in 10, 15 years, really. I did not believe Cano was a remote possibility, and Cruz didn't become one until Cano was already there. So, yeah. Thinking Tucker was a possibility, that's a tough one, man. Like, I'm not going to say stupid, but that's a tough one.
I say it's a great one, but hey, it's a matter of opinion. All right.
I just love that you had hope. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having hope, right?
What's the Star Wars line? Rebellions are built on hope. You got to have hope. Anyway.
We're getting Star Wars quotes now. Do you have to deal with that a lot, TJ? Do you get the Star Wars quotes?
We talk about Star Wars all the time. I think I watch more Star Wars than he does.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sticking on free agents, though, since you brought up Naylor, how vital was it for the team to retain him this offseason?
Yeah, it turns out it was bigger than I thought at the time. Obviously a big deal. You keep a good player, a player in his prime, a player that fits, that wants to be in town, that the ballpark does not scare him at all. But it became bigger because I think the offseason was, I think they barely got a passing grade for me. They're still at least one bat short. I love the Jose Ferrer acquisition. I love that. You get several shots to turn that guy into something he's never been before, but that he's flashed. I like that. It helps you avoid spending $10 million a year on the, in the free agent market, those types, because you don't have it to spend. But then you get to the end of the winter and they kind of race to get the Donovan deal done, and you're still at least one bat short. You can argue there too, right? Like, we don't know what's going to happen in right field. We don't know what's going to happen at DH when Cal Raleigh's not DHing. They could have problems in both of those spots. And we're not even talking about what could happen if guys like Randy Rosarena and JP Crawford are both free agents to be. take steps back, or get hurt like JP is right now. Those are two guys that aren't in their prime really anymore. They're 30 plus years old. You just don't know what's going to happen to them. JP had a bad year a couple of years back, could happen again. And now you might have 3 spots that need upgrades. So it was huge to get Naylor done for baseball reasons for 2026, let alone everything else, 27, 28, and to kind of show, hey, we're still here and there are players that do want to play here and you can hit here.
Okay, now I'm fascinated, and we'll get to more of the actual 26-man roster talk here in a minute or two, but since you mentioned that for you, the Mariners offseason only got a passing grade, or barely got a passing grade, I feel like that's a little off the beaten path from what the, I guess, cookie cutter grades have been for the Mariners this offseason. TJ and I are not afraid to speak our minds, but we both gave them what we thought was a B+ offseason after the Donovan trade. But you clearly don't seem to feel that way. So if you were in the Mariners position, what would you have added if it was up to you for how you would have gotten them to a B+, A- offseason?
I think to get them to a B, for me, you need one more everyday bat that's proven. Even if you get a guy who's only going to be around a year, I'll use a guy that wasn't really available but fits this mold here just because he's off the top of my head. Get a guy like Seiya Suzuki or Ian Happ, whether that's DH or you play him in a corner outfield spot, a guy that can play there, a guy you can leave in the lineup every day and get production out of and just leave him alone. That would have been huge because now we have, 4 players for 2 spots and we don't know what we're going to see from any of them, and that's 2 guys in right field, probably mostly going to be Raley and Robles. And Canzone and Refsnyder are 2 others that can play right field, but that also might see a bunch of DH time as well. They're going to pinch hit. When you have 4 players, you have 2 spots where you're essentially platooning. That really restricts your roster, and you don't know what kind of production you're going to get. Like if you just look on paper, if everybody just repeats what they did last year and look at their splits, it looks pretty good. It just never works out that way. And you're asking those 4 players to cover 2 positions that were covered a little differently last year. Right field was a little bit of a problem last year, but DH was not. DH was not. When it wasn't Cal, sometimes it was Polanco. They mixed guys in there. They got production there, right? And when you kind of couple that with some of the other things, like Cole Young, unproven bat, we don't really know what we're going to see there. And you had opportunities to go out and at least, get somebody that was league average or better for a year or 2 without breaking the bank in free agency, without breaking your farm system up any more than you already did. And you didn't do it, So they got C- grades from me. Over the offseason. I like the Donovan deal. I like the Ferrer get. They got the Naylor deal done. There just wasn't enough else out there, to kind of lean on. So there's too much wait and see for me. And when you're a team that's hoping to win the World Series and everything else about your ball club suggests you can get to and maybe even win the World Series, you got to do more than that. And I don't really think this came down purely to money either. I think it came down to we don't want to take the risk of spending guys down in the farm system. They didn't really like the cost. They did the Donovan thing. I thought it fit. You get 2 years of him. The versatility there is amazing. It's going to help them next year and the year after, having 3 spots he can start at. But they just needed at least one more. If you'd thrown an Ian Happ or a Suzuki in there for even 1 year, they would have got a B out of me.
Do you classify Donovan as an everyday bat?
Not really. I think that's how he's going to be used. I think the impact he gives you is going to equal that because he's proven to be so good against right-handers, but a third of the pitchers he's going to see, if not a little bit more, are going to be lefties, and he hasn't been good with any consistency against lefties. So there's, in a way, yes, because the overall impact is going to be pretty good. You're getting a 2.5 win minimum player. He's been a 3-win player before. That's a pretty good guy that, you can throw in the lineup to some extent most days, right? But yeah, there's going to be some times where you're wondering why Dan Wilson isn't getting pinch hit happy with Brendan Donovan. And it's probably because you can't pinch hit for everybody, every single time. You'll have so many options, on the bench. So yes and no on that one. It's a good question because he has struggled against lefties. And that's why he didn't, fetch more in a trade. That's why they couldn't demand a Cade Anderson or a Ryan Sloan because he's not that everyday guy you just should leave alone somewhere at the top of the order and don't worry about it. You absolutely should worry about when 11. If Garrett Crochet is out there and Brendan Donovan is starting, that doesn't look great. That's not a good matchup. He should not be leading off. He should be hitting 7th or something.
Do you think Josh Naylor figured out anything about T-Mobile Park?
I don't know. See, the one caveat here is sometimes there's just types of hitters. When you are a high contact hitter like Naylor is, when you hit a lot of line drives, you don't hit a lot of fly balls, you're like, at least on the surface, it's going to look like you're going to be fine at Safeco, or excuse me, at T-Mobile. Like, that's been a conversation since it was Safeco, right? We've talked about that. More line drive guys, fewer guys that are strikeout, hit the ball in the air. We saw Eugenio Suarez struggle at T-Mobile. We saw Teoscar Hernandez struggle at T-Mobile, and that's just in the last couple of years. I do wonder, though, if the batter's eye is a problem for some guys and just not for others. Maybe it's a problem for certain righties and not really for lefties much. Maybe it's a problem maybe it's a height thing. Maybe it depends on where you stand in the box. We know the time of day can impact that. I don't know if there's a solution to that or not, but it's pretty clear that he doesn't have a problem with it. Like, he's just has confidence. There's nothing getting in the way. He also is kind of one of those players who knows who he is and can deal with adversity. Like, he's gone in slumps before. He's had that problem. I don't know that, like, when you compare a Teoscar Hernandez from a mental standpoint, how he deals with things, I think it's pretty clear now. Naylor could go over 29 with 14 strikeouts, and you're going to see a completely different approach to dealing with that versus a Teoscar Hernandez. He's a little bit more emotional. He's going to get a little bit more frustrated. And that's not, trying to be, negative or say derogative things about Teoscar Hernandez. They just handle things differently. And I think you just need hitters that are like Brendan Donovan, that are like Josh Naylor, who deal with adversity a little bit differently. And they're different kinds of hitters. They're not relying on getting the ball up in the air on a consistent basis and sacrificing contact to do it. That was Hernandez. That's Julio to some extent. But the funny thing about Julio is the one gripe we have, he hits too many damn ground balls. So he's really not the same guy as Teoscar Hernandez or Eugenio Suarez. So it is kind of funny, though, how it's been all this time and we really don't know what it is, about some hitters, and it gets in their head. We can't really point to it, except it's just kind of this mental thing and they can't deal with it.
Let me follow up on TJ's question with one more thing about Naylor. Do you think him hitting in T-Mobile Park in August and September did a lot for him versus when he gets a taste of T-Mobile Park in April? Could it look different? Sure,
but the numbers are going to look different. Like, he's not, like, he was unbelievable, right? And we know that the warmer weather helps, right? But like I was saying, like, Naylor's a guy who's played in that cold weather before in Cleveland. That's not exactly a bandbox in Cleveland. So, and he doesn't rely on the ball traveling through the air that much. Just hit a bunch of line drives, right? And hope for the best. If he's sitting 250 at the end of April, heading into May, where you start to get where the weather and the air is a little bit different, and certainly in June, he's going to be fine. But if you're Teoscar Hernandez and hitting 250 or 260 is a good year for you, and you're hitting 211 with a 32% strikeout rate entering May, that's a different story. Your frustration level is going to be different. It's just because they're completely different kinds of hitters. Brendan Donovan is basically Josh Naylor with less power, right? There's some other differences. Naylor actually chases more, which is weird. He actually has a high chase rate, but he also knows who he is and what he can do. But they're line drive guys. They're contact guys. They're relatively aggressive hitters. They're not trying to walk 15% of the time. That's what Seattle needed more of. And yeah, it is weird that we haven't solved the T-Mobile thing. Granted, the ball's not going to travel, but there are guys that just completely fall off the cliff sometimes, extended periods of time. Eugenio Suarez is probably the best recent idea, the example there. But the cold weather's, it's different. It's different. But, we think that and we suggest, hey, Naylor hasn't done this whole 2-3 months of cold weather in Seattle at the beginning of the year. But again, he's not the kind of hitter, the high strikeout, bad chases on sliders down. He doesn't do that a whole lot, and he doesn't rely on the ball traveling in the air that much. So I think he's going to be fine. So even a bad month or two looks like, 250, 320, 400 or something for Josh Naylor. That's a little easier for the player to go, okay, I can work with that. I can build from that.
I find it interesting we're talking about fly ball hitters versus line drive hitters, because one of the concerns I have going into this year is that if you look back at these last 4 years, Jason, the more productive overall offensive teams the Mariners have hit more home runs. And to hit more home runs, you need to hit more fly balls. Mm-hmm. This team's not projected to hit as many home runs as they did last year. Mm-hmm. Are you worried there could be some offensive regression because of that?
There could be. And I think that's why you have to that's another reason why I think about, okay, what are you doing in right field? Like, you had an opportunity to go at least find an answer either at DH or right field without spending a bunch of money, without spending, a bunch of top 10 prospects. And they didn't do it. They went the platoon route. Could work. Ref Snyder has hit lefties about as well as Donovan has hit righties, right? So you have to buy that to some extent. He's going to be above average there. What happens against righties? Can Canzone do anything like he did a year ago? Can Rayleigh bounce back? A lot of questions there, right? And some of those guys do, like Rayleigh hit for no power last year. It was the weirdest thing. You just have to buy that the core injury that he had just completely sapped his power and killed his season. But that's a guy who can hit 15, 20 homers, even if he's only playing 60% of the time. So maybe you get a little bit of a bump there. My argument here is this team is going to make more contact, hit for higher average, and get on base more. You can easily make up for like a loss of 40 bombs by doing that. Absolutely you can. And it's the better, more predictable. It's easier to see them being consistent that way too. You could score 2 runs one night, 10 the next, and you go 1-1. But if you score 5 one night and 5 the next, you have a better chance to go 2-0 in those 2 games. And that's the same over any sample size throughout the season. And that's obviously what they're trying to do.
Could Julio make up for some of those home runs? And that's basically my segue here of saying, is this the year for him? For as good as he's already been, can this be the year we see the 8-9 win year out of Julio after what we saw in the second half of last year?
And that's all going to come offensively, right? He's already pretty elite on the bases, already pretty elite out in center field. So when you're talking about 8, 9, 10 win seasons, it's got to come at the plate. He's on this path, I think, to incrementally get better in important areas without making drastic changes to his swing. I think that's on the menu. I think that's what they started with last year. And I think that's Edgar Martinez and Kevin Seitz are saying, hey, you're a big leaguer. We need to avoid taking risk with your swing that might send you backwards because there's no difference in his swing. And the biggest thing with Julio and run production, extra base power, things like that is he hits the ball on the ground too much. I haven't seen anything in the swing mechanics in the WBC or down in Arizona that suggests he's done anything different to do that. So it still looks right now that the approach this year for him is just like last year. Get a little bit better at the chase. Don't chase as badly as you have before. And he did a better job of that last year. We saw the strikeout rate, drop a little bit. We saw certain areas. One thing that used to drive me crazy, still does when I see it, but he did it far less last year. Guy has a really good 2-seamer. Throws a 2-seamer that looks like it's going to be middle in. He has a good 2-seamer. That pitch that looks like it's going to be middle in is going to run in off the plate. You can't do anything with that. What are you swinging at that? Julio drives me crazy when he does that, more than the slider away. He didn't do that much last year. That did not happen as much last year. And if you look at the zones and the chase rates, he knocked a couple of percentage points off 2 or 3 of those zones in terms of chasing, in terms of what he did with 2 strikes as well. His slugging percentage with 2 strikes went up 56 points last year. It's still not good, but you look around the league, when a hitter has 2 strikes, the slugging percentage isn't very good, right? You're protecting a little bit, you're chasing a little bit, the pitcher's in control, but he slugged 288 in 2024 with 2 strikes, and he added 56 points to that last year, and some of that is better pitch selection. If he does that again this year, he's going to be up in that 135 to 140 range, WRC plus wise. And while that doesn't necessarily make him a 9 or 10 win player, that's going to add a win and a half at least, to his total, depending on how the base running and the defense hold up. So any one of these years could be Julio's year to kind of, burst through like Bobby Witt did a couple of years back. I just don't know that this is going to be the year. I think we're still going to see incremental improvements with Julio this year. A few of those homers could come from Julio, but we're going to have to see, what happens. I don't see any swing changes. I don't see depth in box changes that are significant enough to suggest he's much more easily going to produce line drives and fly balls versus ground balls. I think he's still going to hit ground balls, and it's going to drive us crazy.
Buying a home is a big deal. It's probably the largest purchase you'll ever make, and it happens fast. That's why I want to tell you about Pretty Good Home Inspections. They work directly for you, the buyer. Their philosophy is simple. Take the time to evaluate your home carefully and explain what you're really getting into, clearly and honestly. No scare tactics, no sugarcoating, just straightforward information so buyers can make confident decisions. Reports are detailed and delivered in 24 hours, and they're easy to understand. Clients are encouraged to attend the inspection, ask questions, and actually learn about the home. And for the real realtors listening, especially those building their business on trust and long-term relationships, you know that thorough inspections protect your reputation too. When clients feel informed, they feel confident and well taken care of. In this market, you can't afford guesswork. Get a professional, honest opinion that you can trust. Pretty Good Home Inspections. Schedule an inspection today at 253-442-6707. You can also go to prettygoodinspections.com/marine or by scanning the QR code. That's Pretty Good Home Inspections, and tell them that the Marine Layer Pod sent you.
To remind ourselves and some of our listeners, why was he more productive offensively his rookie year than he has been the past 3 years? What was he doing differently?
I think that was a lot of he didn't know any better to some extent, and the league didn't know him to some extent. What was he going to chase on a regular basis?
Sliders.
What was he, right? Like, what was he going to hit well on a regular basis? There was so much we didn't know, and he spent so little time in the upper minors, right? Didn't play in AAA. So you only had AA, and then he gets to the big leagues. Notice that I believe this is, I don't have the numbers up in front of me, I believe his rookie year was his highest walk rate of his career. And while it hasn't sunk big time, it's down like, 1 to 1.5 percentage points, I believe, down around 6.2 the last couple of years. So he was walking more that year, a little bit more patient. And I just think now the league has found ways to get him out in the zone, to get him to chase in the zone on pitches that he really can't do much with. And he's still trying to figure those things out.
What's a reasonable expectation for Cal Raleigh? Somewhere between what he did in 22, 23, and 24 and his season last year? Like somewhere in between there. What's that fair expectation?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish with this. Are you just trying to predict it, to guess it? Or are you trying to kind of determine what the rest of the team has to do to kind of make up for it? Because I wouldn't bet on anything more than what Cal Raleigh did a couple of years ago, except for one thing. The batting average, which obviously impacts the on-base percentage. It's tough for me to see Cal hitting 210 to 220 again. He was hitting 260 for a good portion of last year and ended up hitting, 247? That's a number. We don't talk about batting average a lot. I don't anyway. That's a number that's pretty important and pretty telling to Cal. I think it's up to Cal. Do you want to hit 260 with 30 homers, or do you want to hit 220 and maybe try to hit 40 or 50? I think 60 is probably out of the question, but we thought that last year too, so I don't want to completely throw that in the zero chance pile. But yeah, you have to expect home run regression. But my big thing there too is, let's say Cal hits 240. On base percentage is about the same, batting average about the same, even if just a little bit of a drop. It's not like the 30 homers that we're going to see drop from Cal from 60 to 30 are all outs, right? So maybe those are walks. Maybe those are singles. Maybe they're doubles. So I think it's really up to Cal. What kind of hitter does he actually want to be? And I find it just fascinating that basically his entire improvement last year over the year before was right-handed. Absolutely crazy what he did right-handed. And, that's going to be very telling. I think a couple of months in is going to tell us, hey, look what he's doing right-handed. Maybe the fact that he's doing this again tells us 40 plus is legit. And if he's not, maybe he just kind of reverts back to the year before.
What do you think he needs to get better at?
That's tough too. I think that's all about attack plan. He's a guy who wants to hit the home run every single time at the plate. And I understand it. He's got that kind of power, both sides of the plate, can hit the ball out to left center as a lefty. He's mostly pull as a righty, but we've seen him get better at that as well, being able to hit a few doubles as a righty, even a couple of home runs as a righty that were on the other side of center field last year. To me, it's aggression early in the count because he's hoping to get a fastball. And when he does, he offers at it. And sometimes it's just not a great location. And it's not really about pitch recognition, like pitch type. It's about finding that location that works for him. And doing that with two swings makes it harder. I was talking about this yesterday with Felnine Celestin. You get a 19-year-old kid with two swings. It's hard. You're looking for that pitch, down and in. That's low and away, on the other side of the plate. So here we are, Cal, 28, 29 years old, coming off the season he did last year. If it were me and I were choosing without, knowing what the plan is and how Cal thinks about his at-bats really all that much, I would hope that Cal goes into this thinking, I want to hit 260. I'm going to hit 30 homers on accident. I want to get the best batting average, make the most contact, I can without sacrificing, power and get on base a lot and see what happens there rather than I'm going to hit 60 again. because he's gone into every season in the big leagues trying to hit 60 home runs. It just happened last year. So he's always willing to take his walk, and I think that's going to be really, really important this year. And I think that's another reason why I've kind of reversed my thought on Cal hitting second instead of third, because Donovan's going to get on and Julio's going to ground into a double play more often than Cal is. Hilariously, because Julio's a lot faster than Cal, I've reversed that, and I think Cal's just going to be able to draw that walk a little bit more. So it just really depends on what Cal wants to do.
I think part of what piques my curiosity with that question, paired with the Julio question we just asked you a couple minutes ago, is if Julio was going to take the big jump this year. I'm just kind of curious and thinking out loud about how much value does Julio have to make up when Cal likely has some regression? Still probably going to, I mean, we'll still almost definitely have a good year. But how much does Julio have to make up, or are the wins just made up by the pieces they've added to the roster and getting a full season of Naylor and this team being leaps and bounds better than it was at the start of last year?
Right. What was Julio last year in terms of wins above plate? Almost 6.
Yeah.
If you use the Fangraphs version, I think it was almost 6, like 5.7, 5.8 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was a 126 WRC plus. I think it's reasonable to expect him to get over 130, maybe even up to 135. But expecting or thinking that it's probable that he's going to get up into the 150s, I don't see it. I think the value is going to come from having Naylor all year, having Donovan all year, getting something from Cole Young. Because that's the thing. If they don't get something average or better from Cole Young, they basically have another hole in their lineup to deal with. And they might have a hole in right field and a DH anyway. That's why I gave him a barely passing grade over the offseason. There are too many what ifs. There's too much hope, too much of the Jack Zarenzik approach to things, especially considering where they are. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a better team. It's a significantly better front office. It absolutely chaps my hide that every time you see a GM ranking out there, Preller is in the top 10 and Cashman is ranked ahead of Jerry DiPoto. Don't get me started on that. But I think they're in a spot where they can buy themselves some time and see what some of these guys do and then make some midseason, adjustments and changes if they need to.
Do you think Cole Young is going to be a hole? Do you think he's going to be average? What do you think?
I think he's got a pretty good chance to be around average. I think there's going to be some ups and downs, but I'm not a spring training guy. I certainly don't look at stats in spring training, but he has found the barrel a lot in spring training. And that suggests to me that, he's made some adjustments, made some improvements. We'll see how that plays on a daily basis against, big league pitching, because even in spring training, you might get 50, 60, 70 plate appearances, but a lot of times they're against AAA guys, depth guys, guys that are going to get cut from their organization and end up somewhere else. So we'll see how that plays, but he got a taste of it last year. He's a very determined guy. He's added strength every single year since the draft. And I've always hated, you guys might have seen me on social, like I've always hated the Adam Frazier comp with Cole Young. It's always been garbage. Adam Frazier is 5'8". Okay. Cole Young is a clean 5'10". And with cleats on, he's almost as tall as I am. So this is not a tiny guy that needs to hit the ball on the ground and hit line drives. He actually can drive the ball. We've seen that, right? Now, that's not going to play the same at T-Mobile, but we've seen that there's more strength there. He's going to find the gaps a little bit more. Whether that happens now or next year, or we see a little bit of an up and down, a little bit of both this year, I don't know. It's really hard to be consistent, particularly when you've never done it before. And one of the most difficult things to project and analyze is, when does a player that's had a lot of success in the minors have some of that success on any sort of consistent basis at the big league level? It's really difficult to do. No team is good at it. You hope that he's ready. You hope that you've attacked the right things. You hope that he thinks about things the right way. You hope that he can handle hitting 190 for the first 3 weeks and still climb out of it and not dwell on it and not, kind of get out of your ways and impact how you're going to perform in the future. But Cole Young's one of those questions, right? Cole Young is absolutely one of those question marks. I don't know.
Do you think that power eventually will be a positive development for him, or is it going to be a detractor from what made him so good as a prospect? And I'm going to make a comparison here that I think will make a little bit more sense to both of you. I think of Jared Kelenic as a prospect when he was at his peak in 2019. He's more of a gap hitter, not as much of a bulky pull power hitter that he was when he finally debuted in 21, 22, and 23. Cole doesn't look like that, but Cole Young went from 10 home run, 110 OPS plus-ish hitter at like AA to last year. I mean, he had the longest home run on the team, and he's hitting balls 480 in spring training.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Here's what I like about it. His swing path hasn't changed that much. He's driving the ball there aren't tons of fly balls. I think even in the game on, was it Sunday or Saturday? I can't remember which day it was. I think he went over, but he hit some line drives to the outfield for outs. They weren't lazy fly balls, right? Like he got wood on it, mostly line drives, and that's his thing. When he hits home runs, they're driven. They're not these sky balls. When he starts hitting the ball in the air 50% of the time and starts getting these infield, higher infield fly ball rates, that's when you know there's like an approach problem, attack plan problem, maybe even a swing issue that he needs to climb out of. And we haven't seen that yet. It's essentially the same. I think he knows who he is. He knows he can drive the ball. And I think it helps him more than hurts him, at least for now. The adjustment that he wants pitchers to make is be more careful with me because I'm not going to swing at bad pitches. So therefore, I'm going to get the 2-1, 3-1, 3-0 more often. That's the message you're sending to pitchers when you can drive the ball out of the ballpark a little bit more, than just a punch and Judy kind of guy. You'll throw Adam Frazier strikes all day, right? And Cole Young does not want to be that guy. He wants to be able to draw walks.
Which is why hitting the fastball is going to be so crucial for him this year. Because last year, he really struggled with hitting the fastball. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you can't take spring training results too seriously, but I think there's something that's encouraging about the fact he's been timing up heaters a lot better down in Arizona.
Sure. And, it's tough to gauge, like, were they good fastballs, right? Like, that always comes into play, too. But not getting caught in between. Like understanding what pitchers are trying to do to you sometimes takes time, and the hitters that tend to succeed anyway, we just talked about Julio in this way, are just they have a massive advantage in physical tools. Like Cole Young does not have elite bat speed, right? Julio Rodriguez does, right? Those guys have an advantage. They can make up for some of the other things, the things that are mental, pitch recognition, pitch selection, strike zone judgment, things of that nature. They can make up for that because they have massive bat speed. They can, if a guy's got a good cutter and he's throwing at 92, they can actually sit cutter and still be okay if the guy throws a 97-mile-an-hour four-seamer. Cole Young, not so much, right? Sure. So he knows who he is, though, and until that it looks like he's trying to be someone he's not, I wouldn't worry about the power thing. I think the power's coming the way that it should.
I've got one more position player question for you, and unless TJ's got any more after that, I figured after this one we could switch to pitchers. But while we've got you on here, I figure we got to ask, especially as somebody who's a big prospect guy. Within reasonable expectations, what does a successful rookie year look like for Colt Emerson?
That's a good question. I think just being average at the plate would be a successful season. I think he's going to be an asset in the field, whether they ask him to play third or short or second. He'll be at least average there. He doesn't have a lot of experience at third or second. But I think being average, it is, because I think we're going to see some ups and downs. And I mentioned, and Cole Young is included in this. If Cole Young starts the year and he struggles, right, and then he's okay and he has a good week or two, the overall number still might not be good. If he ends the year and he's like a 94 WRC plus hitter, but he was a 70 the first 2 months of the season, you're going to feel pretty good about that season, even though the overall numbers don't look great, right? You're going to be like, Cole Young's a dude. He struggled early the first couple months. The last 4 months of the season, he's been good and more consistent. The same thing could happen for Emerson. Emerson is really interesting. I don't think he's near as ready as some people think he is. I think when a pitcher goes up there who has either seen him or really understands what he's trying to do, he'll struggle. And just like we saw Cole Young in the big leagues last year. And I would rather see Emerson go to AAA, and he's going to go to AAA, stay down there a couple of months, no matter what the numbers look like, whether he's hitting 220 with no power or he's hitting 350 with power, to go down there for a couple of months, enough to give pitchers a second and third look at him so he can learn to deal with that. Because you don't really get a whole lot of that with guys that have, like, you think about what's happening in the California League and even the Northwest League from a pitcher standpoint. The turnover doesn't give you the opportunity to see the same pitchers 2, 3, 4, 5 times as often as it would in some of the upper levels and certainly the big leagues. Then you got to think about the talent level. What was actually going on here? Guys that have fastballs, okay, maybe. But guys that have fastballs and plus sliders, or are they still working on their slider, right? And hardly ever are you going to see a 3-pitch starter that shows well with all 3 pitches. And even if you do, maybe in Everett, right? If Cade Anderson starts in Everett, you got a guy that has 4 pitches that has pretty decent control command. But you're only going to see that guy once a month. But then how about a guy that if you're Emerson, you're facing a bunch of righties too. How many lefties are you seeing that do that, right? Even if Emerson was going to start this year in Everett, there'd be probably one guy in that league that had at least 3 pitches that he could command, and that guy would be on his team, right? So that's what the time in the minors actually does for these hitters. It gives them opportunities to come across all the things that he's eventually going to come across and fail in the minors first instead of getting the big leagues and having to go back. I think the Jackson Holiday situation is probably the best example. I think if Holiday stays down in the minors for another couple of months, they probably could have avoided this extended, well, we're not getting out of them what we thought. We've saw a lot of guys over the years here in Seattle rush to the big leagues, or not get sent back when they should have. Like Zunino was both rushed and then not sent back and left there for long enough. Ackley should have been sent back, right? You probably could say the same thing about Jesus Montero and Bryce Miller and guys like, Brad Miller and guys like that who probably needed to go back for a little longer. This player development staff is better, but even Cal Raleigh had to go back, right? And figure some things out. I just want to see Colt Emerson on the right timeline and not pushed to the big leagues because J.P. Crawford is hurt or because he's hitting 350 for 6 weeks in AAA. I want the skill set to be ready and Colt Emerson upstairs ready to handle failure. And until he fails somewhere, especially higher in the minors, to some extent where he has to change some things, I'm not going to be confident in that. And while you can do some of that in the big leagues, Cole Young's going to have to do that. The Mariners have the opportunity to let Colt Emerson do that in April, May, maybe even part of June before that happens. So I don't think Emerson's as ready for the big leagues as some people think he is. I think he's more on the, you look to Cole Young last year about when he came up. That makes a lot of sense.
That's exactly the timeline I've used, the Cole Young timeline. So.
Yeah.
Didn't Colt experience failure last year? It was the middle of the season, and he had an OPS sitting in the 700s, and then he introduced the toe tap, and then he exploded. I feel like that is an example of him.
Did he struggle, or did he just hit the ball on the ground too much? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there wasn't like tons of swing and miss. It was like, wow, I'm struggling with the left-handed breaking ball. There was really none of that. It was, I'm making contact, I'm just not hitting line drives, right? So then he changed things up. He tightened things up. He talked about the toe tap. He changed a thing or two with his hands and where he starts, and it took off. Did he actually struggle, though? Did he have a difficult time mentally figuring out what was going on? That's going to happen at the big league level. You don't think Cole Young was rethinking just about everything last year at some point and then frustrated that he couldn't get in the lineup because of that? Yeah, that happened. So he went through that, and it didn't hurt the Mariners last year. And I just think if you're doing that with Colt Emerson, you have an opportunity for him to get most of that out of the way in AAA. Colt Emerson is further along at this point right now than Cole Young was a year ago, but not by enough to where he should be in the conversation before June.
So if I'm going to throw the question out here, what I wrote down is an expectation for Colt Emerson going to be closer to 2025 Cole Young or 2022 Julio. It's Cole Young by a landslide.
Man, Julio was awfully good. I would say
the thing is about this question is that Colt ranks way closer to Julio as a prospect than he does to Cole Young.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. The upside is significantly higher. We're talking about a guy who could be a 60 player for 10 years. Because here's what's great, and here's where I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. Colt Emerson comes into the league, and people are like, yeah, this is a guy who has a chance to get 280 with 12 to 14 home runs. And I'm like, you're absolutely out of your mind. You're absolutely out of your mind. You watch one round of batting practice with this kid right before the draft, and you're like, if they do this right, this is a 20 home run shortstop. And that is an absolute game changer, right? Then he got big, and I was like, maybe shortstop's not the thing. And then he answered that question last year. But that's the big difference, right? That first part of that, 280, 12 to 14 homers, that's Cole Young now, right? Maybe it's 15, 17 in his prime, but that's pretty much Cole Young now. That was the thought process around Colt Emerson, after they were drafting him. And I was like, all you guys are absolutely nuts. And I didn't hear anybody else talking about that until last year. You see those hands, you see the bat speed, you see how quickly he gets on fastballs in. He can get to that pitch. He's just going to need time to grow. Years ago, had a scout tell me about Felix Hernandez. He was in AA, I think, about to start the year in AAA at 19, 20 years old or whatever. And, I asked, what do you think of Felix this year? And he's like, there's nothing to see. I'm not going to go watch. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, he's in AAA. He's like, all you need to do is make sure that guy gets enough water, and, he's going to be what he is. We're not there with Colt Emerson quite yet, but it is a matter of time. Where we're going to have enough confidence because he's faced enough upper level minor league pitching where you're like, all right, like let's see it. I think Colt Emerson's going to make some all-star teams. I don't think Cole Young is. I think Colt Emerson's going to make some all-star teams at shortstop.
I love it. All right, if we're going to transition to pitchers a little bit, I got a couple questions on these guys, and then we can finish with a couple questions that are a little more generic. But how can Bryan Woo take another step forward in 26? Because each of the first couple years in the big leagues, he's done it. It went from, can he get lefties out? Answered it. Can he be an innings eater? And can he work deep into games? Answered it. What's still left for him to do this year?
I think the quality of the breaking balls he's throwing can get better. I think the consistency of the off-speed stuff in terms of the changeup can get better. And I think the pitch usage can get better. I think sometimes there are too many fastballs. I think sometimes he overthrows, the slider because the last time he faced this hitter. I remember last year they were facing Oakland and Wilson, the shortstop. First time up, threw him a lot of fastballs, and he like singled up the middle or something like that. Nothing hit hard, but he singled up the middle. Next time up, it was slider, and he walked him. And I think they're just little things. They're little things that he can get better at. I think the limit with Woo is you're always going to think about the workload with him because he's had multiple injuries, including last year that, like how different would the Mariners postseason have been with Bryan Woo, who was their best pitcher last year, ready to roll in some form or fashion, and he wasn't. But I also think I'm glad you went to pitchers here because you asked about how do they make up for the offense, the regression, mostly from Cal Raleigh. I think having better pitching is going to help doing that. Is going to help do that. I think that starting rotation wasn't great last year, right? Certainly compared to 2024. And it's not looking great with Bryce Miller not ready to start the season, but Kirby can be better. Gilbert can be better. Castillo can be a little better. So we'll see what happens with the Bryce Miller spot in that rotation and how much they have to get from Emerson Hancock and or Cooper Criswell, and how soon they maybe get to Cade Anderson later in the year. But I think there's a good chance that starting rotation is noticeably better than they were a year ago, and that's going to make up for some of the offense they may not get this year that they did a year ago.
Does Bryan Woo have a 30% strikeout rate in him? Is he that kind of pitcher?
Maybe. I mean, that's the thing. If you're telling me he bumps his slider up a half a grade, right, and he bumps his change up a half a grade, and nothing else goes backward, command doesn't go backward, two-seamer, four-seamer doesn't go backward. Yeah. I mean, what was he at last year? 26?
27%.
27. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And whether that happens this year or next, I think that could happen. That absolutely could happen. He was pretty dialed in against, I know it's the White Sox, but you saw the location on a lot of those pitches. And that was a pretty good performance by Bryan Woo, regardless of the actual results in the game. Throw the pitch where you want, and he has good control. Command can always get better. I always think about Gilbert's command can get better. Kirby's command can get better. Castillo's that's one thing that a pitcher can always add to the arsenal. And it's just, where do you throw the pitch? Do you hit your spots? Do you throw it where you're supposed to? One of the things with Woo and Miller both is the location of their breaking balls that they kind of rely on the hitter not being able to say when he throws his breaking ball, it's going to be down and away from a righty and down and into a lefty. They throw that backup one sometimes up in the zone. That ain't on purpose most of the time. And while it's valuable to do that on occasion, that's very dangerous as well. You can hang that pitch. So just little things with Woo. I mean, he's got all that fastball value. Who has a better fastball in terms of the results that actually throws both fastball types in all of baseball right now? I'm not sure Paul Skeens beats him out for that.
Joe Ryan?
Maybe. Does he throw both to that level? Like maybe?
Maybe Ryan just throws the four-seamer.
Yeah. But either way, we don't know for sure. We're not throwing out like five guys, right? That's how good Bryan Woo has it from a fastball standpoint. If you outlawed all non-fastballs, Bryan Woo would be about the best pitcher in the game.
Yeah. How high on your list of priorities, personal Jason Churchill priorities, of extensions, would Bryan Woo be on that list? Because Jerry Dipoto just a couple days ago was on MLB Network and said he feels like there's some confidence in getting some more internal extensions done. He obviously didn't say who, but of the guys that remain unextended, how high would Woo be on that list?
Yeah, so what's his Woo's third season? So he's got 4 years left, including this year of control. I think the Logan Gilbert conversation is different, but I think with Wu at this point, you're just like, how do we account for the free agent years, and how do we account for the next couple of years based on the injury we saw last year? How much are we worried about that, right? Is this a guy who's going to turn into a 32 start, 200 inning guy consistently? How worried about that actually are we? Because he would be the ideal candidate to do, because you're not talking about 7 years and $160 million because he's got 4 years left, right? If it's still early enough in the year where you could get an agent and Major League Baseball be okay with it, including 2026 in an extension. So if you're doing a 6-year deal, for example, you're buying out 2 free agent years. And if you value that at around $25 million, give or take, that's $50 million. Now it's just, how do you value the rest of the way, right? How do you value the next several years? And the advantage to Brian Wu there is the risk. There's a lot of risk in it for the player to not take, $80 million or $100 million right now. So I think if you went to some of these guys with that, Wu included, he'd have to take it. I think he would be the one that I'd be prioritizing even over Logan Gilbert right now, because I want to make sure Logan Gilbert is fine. Mm-hmm. I think there are ways you can protect yourselves in that contract, but I still want to see what version of Logan Gilbert we're going to get. It was not efficient last year.
What should Logan take from his 2025 season, and what should he leave?
Yeah, that's a good one. If I'm Logan Gilbert, I'm thinking, almost the Bull Durham take. Every once in a while, I just have to think strikeouts are fascist. Like, let's get some ground balls, right? And that strikeout rate spiked last year, but I don't think it helped him. There were a lot of games. I can't remember the numbers exactly now, but he had 2 or 3 times as many games last year where he failed to get to the 6th inning than the year before. It was like astronomical difference. I think in 2024, I think he only had 8.
22 I think he only had starts.
Right. And that's not Logan Gilbert. That's not the Logan Gilbert we've gotten used to here. So I think being more efficient, getting through the 5th and into the 6th and even through the 6th more often should be his goal. He's going to have to be more efficient. They're not going to let him throw 125 pitches a night. You don't want to do that. It's not going to happen. He knows that's not part of the plan. So he has to be more efficient. So how can he use the arsenal he has? He almost pitches like a reliever from the first batter all the way through. And I think that's just adding, pitches to his total, and he's only allowing himself, so many batters. So, and then I think sometimes when he's trying to be more efficient, throw more strikes, like, he doesn't necessarily have the arsenal that fits that perfectly. So I think he's still trying to figure that out. You throw 4-seamers. I know he's got the extension, but that fastball doesn't move a whole lot. And you throw 4-seamers, first pitch, second pitch, trying to get ahead, and guys are going to hit that in a gap. And, I think we've seen that. We saw that plenty last year. And that just adds even more pitches to your total. So just efficiency. How can he be more efficient and be that 6-7 inning guy this year that he was a couple of years ago, without completely giving away and getting away from the ability to punch out hitters in key situations. And oddly enough, it actually reminds me of Jose Ferrer. Everybody's like, oh, he only struck out 22% of the batters. Yeah, but when runners were on base and they were in high leverage spots, that spiked to 25 to 28%. I think if Logan Gilbert can figure out a way to do that a little bit more, he'll be fine. And I absolutely agree with him being the opening day starter. That's what I would have done too.
For George Kirby, and this is the last pitcher question, at least I have, but is this who he is at this point, or is there more left in the tank? Somebody gave us a comp the other day. It was Hembo from ESPN. I actually thought it was a pretty interesting comp, and he's given it to us too in the past, where he said he reminds him a lot of Aaron Nola, where Aaron Nola in 2018 had the one huge year. Every year, all the stuff under the hood always seems to favor him. Things like FIP. He obviously doesn't walk a ton of guys, but he's more of a strike thrower than a strike creator. So are we at the point where Kirby's essentially thrown 5 big league seasons and we know who he's going to be at this point? Or is there still room left in the tank to hit what people once thought he could hit, of being a Cy Young contender?
Yeah, I think the difference is, first of all, Nola got to that good spot. What would you say? It was like 2018 where, he kind of went nuts or whatever.
Oh, he had like an 8 or 9 win season. Yeah.
Right. But he even had some really good years after that where he was significantly better. It's Nola's was more of an up and down instead of I'm a 3-win guy, 4-win guy, 4-win guy, then 8-win and then back to 3-4. Like he had I think he had a 6-win season 2 years ago or 3 years ago. maybe right before the contract or maybe 2 years before the contract. So he's bounced around a little bit and hasn't quite been elite. I think that could be it for Kirby. I think he's struggling with because there's not a lot of deception in that delivery, right? So he has to be, again, here's that word again, really efficient. He has to command his pitches. And it's mostly with the breaking stuff. I think the best way George Kirby could move forward is stop tinkering with cutter, slider, curveball, pick the two you're most comfortable with, and perfect the changeup splitter, whichever one of those two things you want to run with, and do what Logan Gilbert and Bryce Miller have done. And I think he has an opportunity to do that. I think he throws from that kind of a slot where he can hide that pitch where it'll, it's a fastball slot. It's a fastball, release in a lot of ways, and, take 8 to 10 miles an hour off the 97 mile an hour heater. And that might be his strikeout pitch. I think he's tinkered so much with the breaking ball. And, last year we saw him try not to be in the zone so much. Well, I think the whole don't be in the zone so much should be about the fastball, not the breaking stuff. Like the breaking stuff you already don't want to do that. You don't want to throw a ton of sliders in the strike zone, right? You want them to tease the zone, break out of the zone, get the hitter to swing. And he just isn't able to do that as much. So, we're still seeing though, what did we see from Kirby last year from a strikeout rate? It's still, it's still good. He's certainly not Logan Gilbert, but he was I'm looking at 26%, a career high, right? So we know he can do that, but did he do that at the expense of some other things that caused some of those underlying, numbers not to look as great? But when you look a little deeper, I'm big on, I kind of group together like ERA with FIP and XFIP and XERA and all that stuff. The runs allowed metrics. The ERA didn't look great, right? 4.21 for Kirby. But that's a 3.37 FIP, a 3.25 XFIP. That 3.25 XFIP, best of his career. So he did a lot of things last year that were actually really good. And I think maybe we're staring a little too much at the ERA. Maybe we're staring a little too much at, things that were dictated by him being out of the lineup. He did miss 6 weeks. He only made 22, 23 starts. I'm really interested though. Like Kirby wants to do things a little bit differently this year. I just think the tinkering with the breaking balls has gone far enough. I just think become a 2-seam, 4-seam splitter guy and mix in the breaking balls instead of the breaking ball being the second thing he goes to. They're not going to fool anybody at this point, and he can keep working on them. That happens, and we're talking about a guy who's 27, 28 years old. Yeah, barely 28. He's still got time. And a guy that throws strikes at 95 plus that easily, you're kind of never done getting better. You always have that extra opportunity to do some things. Different from a guy like Robbie Ray, who had to come from struggling throwing strikes to throwing more strikes. That's probably the ceiling. We've seen the best from Robbie Ray. I don't necessarily think that's true with George Kirby.
Can you give us a breakout prospect in this system for 2026?
A breakout. So you mean somebody who doesn't rank very high right now, who, other than the guys that are the first time in the organization, that's a good. How about Corbin Dickerson? I have him in my top 15. Some other places have him about the same spot, but nobody really talks about him because he hasn't. I think this is a guy who could end up being, I've thrown some comps out there that people have asked about with Dickerson. And the first one that I thought of was Austin Hayes with Dickerson. Can play a little center field early in his career at least, has some pop. If you can avoid the 30% strikeout rates, he's going to have some seasons where maybe he's worth 2-3 wins in the big leagues. So I think maybe Corbin Dickerson. Griffin Hughes, though, would probably be my first choice. I think that development model is very Bryce Miller to me. I really like that pick, and I like what the Mariners have planned for him. So as long as he stays healthy, I think that's a guy who could move from the top 15 into the top 10. There's still some reliever risk there, but there was with Bryce Miller too. And we had no idea Brian Wu had much of a chance to get to the big leagues when they took him a couple of years back, and look where he is now. This club still knows what they're doing with pitchers. So I'd say Griffin Hughes first and maybe Corbin Dickerson second. And all those young guys, those international guys, Leandro Romero is probably the one that made the biggest leap last year. But we're going to see Bautista take a big leap this year. I think if you watch the spring breakout game, you saw what Bautista could do. Every single at bat he looked good, and I think we're going to see more of that this year. There was a bunch of strikeouts last year and low batting average that worried some people, but he's so tooled up and he just needs to get his feet underneath him and he'll be good. But those guys are always candidates for that. So I'll go with Hughes and Dickerson, a couple of college picks from last year.
In the AL West, can anybody hang with the Mariners? I mean, I'm just looking up and down this division. Oh, you're nodding yes. See, I'm looking at the division. You can give your intake here in a second, but I see Houston and I see a roster that's aging with their stars and a rotation past Hunter Brown that has a lot of question marks. I look at a Texas team that kind of looks like a jumbled roster in a lot of different ways offensively, with a couple of good arms and adding Mackenzie Gore, who's obviously very good. A's are pretty one-dimensional with their offense and not a lot of pitching, and then the Angels are the Angels. So I'm just looking up and down the West. I'm like, can anybody hang with the Mariners?
Injuries can be the equalizer. I think that's the problem. Seattle's dealing with some guys coming off injuries. What is Logan Gilbert going to be? What is Bryce Miller going to be? Not really worried too much there, with Brian Wu. And if the Rangers get any luck with injuries, what if Corey Seager plays 140 games? What if Jacob deGrom gives them another full season? What if Eovaldi gives them 25 starts, right? They picked up Mackenzie Gore. I do think the Rangers are going to need the injury luck on their side to stay in the game there. But when I look at the Astros, I think I'm a little higher on the Astros than most. Hunter Brown's obviously really good. I think Burrows is going to help them. Imai, I think, is going to help them quite a bit. Javier's, starting the season healthy. We'll see what happens at the back of their rotation, but eventually Spencer Arrighetti, who's flashed pretty good, trending up. I don't count Lance McCullers for anything. That guy always gets hurt. I think that bullpen still has a chance to be really, really good, maybe the best in the division, by far. And I still see a lineup that is going to be pain in the ass, to be honest with you. I don't expect Christian Walker to struggle like he did last year. I don't expect him to have an MVP season or anything. But you're talking about hitters in that lineup: Walker, Paredes. Altuve is still good, even though he's not as good as he used to be. Let's see what Carlos Correa can give the Astros, right? We'll see. Jeremy Pena, pretty good player, had a good year last year. He might be a regression candidate, but he might not be, too. He might still be heading north. Yordan Alvarez being back is huge. And obviously an injury risk, though. He gets hurt a lot. So if you're telling me Corey Seager gets 140 games, maybe Alvarez gives them 140 games, those two teams are completely different ball clubs, right? Mm-hmm. And if those two teams, and I know the Astros tried, they didn't do much at the deadline last year, but if the Rangers stay in it and they add aggressively at the deadline, they're going to be able to stay with the Mariners to some extent. I'm not saying they're 95-win team, but that's a team with a lot of talent, and I think this Houston team, as long as they can find a way to keep that rotation pretty healthy, they're going to be a pain in the ass. I would not be surprised if we looked up in May and the Astros lead the division by 4 games. Like, I think they're good enough for those kinds of ups and downs during the season to have enough ups to stay with Seattle. I don't think the Mariners are a juggernaut. Here's where the problem comes. While the Mariners have some injury stuff, right, the Astros have more, and the Rangers have even more, and we know the Athletics, while they're probably going to be a pain, particularly offensively, the Angels aren't very good again. I do think at the end of the day, the Mariners have a significant advantage. They have more avenues to winning 90-plus games than those other clubs. They need less luck. They need less health luck. They need less randomness. They need less acquisitions during the season to get to 90-plus and win the division. But there are a lot of scenarios where those 3 teams are kind of neck and neck, at least the first half of the season. And, if you're a Mariners fan, you probably don't want to hear that. But there's also this, if you're rolling the dice 100 times, there's a pretty good chance that 60-plus, rolls of that dice, Seattle wins that division by 5-plus games too. And if they have bad luck with injuries, they're going to get buried. Like, Seager can't miss 90 games. Alvarez can't miss half the season. Hunter Brown can't miss jack, right? Like everything they do is kind of magnified. Every injury they have is magnified even more than Seattle. So Seattle is the best team. I think they're pretty clearly the best roster in the division. But there are a lot of paths to this. Long season, injuries are big, acquisitions are big. And there are things that can happen. If you're talking about Houston, don't you look at what happens if someone jumps, like a Zach Cole or a DeCenzo or someone like that jumps and is better this year. Because they have their own Cole Youngs and Colt Emersons to some extent, right? Even if it's not a top prospect, they got a guy who can take a jump or 2 guys who can take a jump versus what they did a year ago that nobody's really including in their projections right now. And I think that's very real, particularly for the Houston Astros.
Even with all of that, I think all the projections and a lot of people's opinions at the beginning of the season as this Mariners team has good of a chance as any Mariners team in history to make the World Series. So, can you give me a reason why the Mariners will make the World Series and a reason why the Mariners won't make the World Series?
This is really easy for me on both ends. Number one, if they're the healthiest team in the league. If you tell me they're the healthiest team in the league, they have the best chance to go to the World Series. Having the players they have available to them at a max rate is so huge. And that's huge for every team. But I don't know that you can say, hey, if the Minnesota Twins are the healthiest team in the league, they're going to the World Series. That's not true, right? We don't feel that about Cleveland. I don't even really feel that about the Detroit Tigers, even though they've made some moves that make them very, very interesting and the favorite in that division. So that would be it. I think health. If you get 30-plus starts out of at least the 4 guys that are going to start the season healthy, and maybe you get 25 and a Miller, I think you're going to get some semblance of a return to 2024 performance as a group from the rotation. I think that's the key for Seattle getting to and maybe even winning the World Series. The thing that might keep them from it is how they run their team on the field during games, and that's Dan Wilson. That's it. I mean, I think he lost them 8 games last year. That's a lot of games for a manager to lose a team, and I'm not even including the postseason, the big one in the postseason. One fun thing, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but it's the whole sky is falling. The Dodgers buy all the players, and they did it again with Tucker and whatever. But I've been getting a lot of questions like, okay, let's say the Mariners get to the World Series. Is it like the worst time to get to the World Series? Not they don't want to, but is it the worst time to get to the World Series because the Dodgers are so good and you just won't beat them? And I'm thinking, where did this line of thinking come from, first of all? Did the Blue Jays, who you took to 7 and should have beat, did they not have a 3-2 lead in that series last year? Did they not get to Game 7 against the Dodgers last year? What in the world is this conversation, guys?
All right, here's my take on that. The Blue Jays infinitely matched up better with the Dodgers than the Mariners did. Because the Blue Jays don't strike out. They put the ball in play. I think that Dodgers rotation would have carved the Mariners lineup up.
Yeah, I don't.
Really?
Yeah, I don't. Huh. Yeah. Look where that Dodgers rotation, maybe Yamamoto, but look where that Dodgers rotation struggled. The thing they struggled with the most, the long ball. The long ball. That's what keeps you in the games. So I'm not saying the Mariners would have done it exactly like the Blue Jays or even beat the Dodgers, but you're not getting wiped in 5 games in that series. That's not happening. And you have a little bit better team this year, at least to start the season, than you did to start last year. And we'll see where they are after the deadline this year with some of their young guys coming up. Maybe Emerson. We'll see the development of Cole Young. We'll see if that helps, and we'll see what they do at the deadline. But I just don't understand that process. I got probably 10 questions that were kind of the same. Like, isn't this just the worst time? The Dodgers are so good, we're just never going to beat them. I'm like, I think if you played that series 10 times, you'd beat them 2 or 3 times at least. I just don't understand that line of thinking at all. And obviously, you want to get to the World Series regardless and get that off your back. But that's just a weird one to me. You can. It's a good argument. The Blue Jays lineup matched up with the Dodgers pitching better than Seattle would have because they just make so much contact. But you could say that about the Mariners rotation in the Blue Jays lineup too. And if Dan Wilson's not your manager, you're in the World Series.
Yeah, you haven't. I mean, most people haven't. We haven't, but you haven't let that Game 7 go, have you?
No, Dan Wilson should not be the manager of the Seattle Mariners. That is a fireable offense right there alone. But because we live in Seattle and because owners are about, the happy totals and the bobbleheads and the familiar faces, here we are. And I'm not saying Dan Wilson is the worst manager in the game. I don't know if that's true, but he's not one of the best. And this club went as far as they did last year, even though Dan Wilson was their manager. It was like in spite of him, not because of him. And the whole league sees that. Like you know how many texts I got when Bizzardo came into the game and was warming up from people that are like special assistants, consultants, former GMs that are in media now going, what's your boy doing? I got that from and I was like, dude, stop. I don't know, man. I don't know. And then 10 seconds later, boom, and the game has changed. There was a lot of that. And it's like, I can't explain it, man. I can't. He's got free reign. I can't explain it. Scott Service did not have free reign like that. And even if he did, he would have trusted the numbers more than his gut. That's just not how the game is managed. Even the worst managers in the league that I can think of, still don't go to their gut like that. I don't know how to explain it.
Listen, you had player personnel people and front office people texting you during that. We had a bunch of our Arizona State friends in group chats texting us the same thing. So who really has the more credible information on that?
Yeah, I think Arizona State University has the more credible information on that. It's nuts that, to me, I know he got roasted. I understand that. It went away too fast. And to me, it's not exactly the same, but it's akin to throwing the ball and not handing it to Marshawn Lynch. And Pete Carroll was shredded for that and still gets shredded for that. Mm-hmm. It's not exactly the same, but it's close enough to that where every single time the Mariners come up, as long as Dan Wilson is the manager, that should come up. Well, Dan Wilson's your manager. Has he changed? Is he going to trust the matchups? Is he going to trust the numbers? Or is he going to go with his gut feel? Because that was just atrocious. That's just I think it's – and by the way, I'm the guy who thinks you don't have to run the ball on that down. You just don't throw a low percentage pass like that.
Correct.
To your number 4 receiver.
Right,
like
exactly.
You could have rolled out on play action and thrown it away like out of the end zone if nobody
a fade,
was there.
something, right?
Anything
to open it up, right?
You only had one time
just
out.
So weird.
Yeah.
So it was the play call, but there's multiple things you could have done in that series against Toronto as well. It didn't have to be Munoz. It could have been Brash. It could have been something else. You could have done a lot of things differently in that position, but it's a tough one for me to get through, and to make sense of. And I just don't think – I think we're too nice. I think the media is too nice about it because they've never made the World Series still, and they should have been in it. They were in the driver's seat, and they had – I can't remember exactly, but guys were available at least and ready to go. And you guys were telling me earlier about Munoz wasn't even in the plan right there, which is just – I don't know if you guys allow swearing on your show.
Oh, you can say whatever you want.
But that was such a dog shit thought process, guys. Like I don't understand it. And right now I don't have any confidence that's going to change, but I will acknowledge it was his first full year managing, never done it before. Right. And maybe that can change. Maybe he got to know Manny Acta and Woodworth and Seitzer and some of the other people that he talks to down there on the field, and maybe his experience changes him. I think if you're a Mariners fan, you have to hope to some extent that that's what happened, because a manager's more likely to hurt you than he is to help you, and that's what happened in 2025 for the Seattle Mariners.
Last thing for me, Church, what would the indicators be that he has changed? Like what if a fan is watching a game, what is going to be the indicator of that?
Things like I don't automatically pull Rob Refsnyder like in the 6th inning when a right-handed reliever comes in. If the other team has one or two good lefties that they're almost certain to go to in a close game, if he leaves them in thinking I'm okay to sacrifice this one because they have two lefties down there that they're going to go to, maybe it's Josh Hader. We know Josh Hader's down there. Do I want Luke Raley facing Josh Hader in the 8th or 9th inning? Or do I want Rob Refsnyder doing that? If we see some change in that, you don't automatically just right away. And that's what happened in 2025. Rob Refsnyder would have been ripped out in the 6th inning. Raley would have come in the game, or Canzone would have come in the game. And then later, Josh Hader comes in, and Canzone or Raley has to face Hader instead of Rob Refsnyder. I think weighing those two situations it has to change. The way that gets weighted out. If there's a guy on 2nd and 3rd with one out, and they bring in Abreu, you're playing the Astros, they bring in Abreu, and it's the 6th or 7th inning, and it's tied. Okay, I see the argument for not allowing Refsnyder to face Abreu right there, right? Or some other tough righty, and going to Raley. But if there's a runner on first, like what are we doing here? We're prioritizing runner on first, down 3-2 in the 6th inning, over a close game in any situation, and having Refsnyder face Hader versus Hader facing Raley or Canzone. We saw that 1,000 times last year. So that would be one. We'll see how he handles Brendan Donovan. I think that's going to be somewhat telling as well. Guy should not just be the leadoff hitter, period, every game. Even if you're going to start him, that's one thing, although I don't even love that. I don't know that you have another option. I don't think you go to Rivas at 3rd against a bunch of lefties. I don't know that that's necessarily better than just having Donovan in the lineup. But he can't be your leadoff hitter against Garrett Crochet and Tariq Skubal. You can't do that. And I think that's what we're going to see. And that's just a huge disadvantage, particularly over time. And so we'll see. We'll see how that develops. Those would be a couple of things. I think another one would be you guys mentioned the George Kirby thing, earlier in the playoffs, leaving him in too long. There's really no argument for leaving him in the game, right?
Oh,
left-handed hitters coming up.
You're talking about Kerry Carpenter, yeah.
Yes, Kerry Carpenter coming up, who absolutely torches right-handed pitching anyway. How many times through the lineup are you going to let George Kirby go, right? Doesn't have a great history of that. Didn't have a good year with that last year. It's a terrible match. There's no argument for leaving him in, and yet it happens. There better be an explanation for that. My bullpen was absolutely taxed, right? And if he's not answering questions like that, nothing's changed. Like, he's got to have a reason. He can't just talk around it. And I just don't have a whole lot of confidence that it's going to change, to be honest with you. We'll see, though. I have a little bit of hope, just not a lot of confidence.
Let's try to end this on a slightly positive note. So, as we do, last question. Do you have a win prediction?
I do. I'm going to hold out.
Okay. Maybe you're doing it for your own show.
I'm going to hold out because I'm doing a preview episode on Tuesday at Baseball Things. But I will tell you this. It's not real aggressive.
Okay.
It's not real aggressive. The team is very much like it was a year ago. They're different, but in terms of how good they are, it's very, very similar, at least to start the season. I'm most curious if I got to fast forward and learn anything. I'd fast forward to the day after the trade deadline to see what that roster looks like. Sure. I think it's going to be fascinating. There could be 5 new players on that team, a couple from the system and a couple from the trade market. So really interesting team.
Church, always fun. Love having you on. Always great talking ball with you, and can't wait to do it again soon.
4 years in a row.
Are we making it 5 next year? I hope
we're going to go 5 next year. Man.
Well, yeah. Hopefully there's an opening day at this time next year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Talk about ending it on a sour note. Thanks, TJ.
Always love talking to Church. Shout out to him. I will say, I think TJ and I and a lot of us are higher on this team than Church is, but very, very unique perspective. I think he highlights some of the very, very nuts and bolts things about all these different players and the division and the Mariners in general. Like, you get some very unique perspective from Church, which is why we love having him on. But opening day is a day away. We really do believe this is going to be an awesome Mariners team that's going to be a ton of fun to watch, that's going to be really exciting, and we cannot wait for the year to get started. So, the next time you hear us, we will be having games played, and you'll hear us live from Occidental Hall. Hopefully you guys come by after the game and watch the podcast taping. We'd love to have you. Or come pregame, or both. Seriously, it's going to be a blast. With that just about wraps up this edition of the Marine Layer Podcast. You guys know the drill. If you want to listen to the full-form podcast, you can do so wherever you get your audio pods. Make sure to download these episodes if you're listening, you guys. Go rate and review. Please leave it 5 stars, whether you're on Apple, Spotify, any of the audio platforms. That 5-star review always helps. Go like, comment, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. You can check us out at our website as well, marinelayerpod.com. Go get your merch. Go get your podcast merch. There's never a bad time to go get it. You can find our Patreon. You can find all our episodes there. That's marinelayerpod.com. And you can find us all across social media at marinelayerpod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.